Hi class, we're going to talk about Chapter 6, which has to do with prejudice. What I'm going to do is, rather than having one long lecture that lasts an hour and a half, I'm going to divide things up into mini lectures. That way you can go back, review specific content, and it'll make it a little easier for you to watch and review and learn, I think. So what we're going to talk about first are the definitions of specific words we're going to need to know. The words prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination are often used interchangeably in common language. But from a social psychological perspective, the words have specific meaning and content, and we're going to review what each one is. So prejudice is really a negative attitude or a prejudgment based on a person's assumed membership with a group. It might be that that person doesn't even belong to that group, but the person assuming the person belongs to the group then imparts on them some kind of negative attitude or judgment. I have here a cartoon by Dr. Seuss. It's not the Cat in the Hat or things that we might be used to in terms of Dr. Seuss. He actually did a lot of cartooning that was used during World War II as part of sort of war propaganda and the war effort. And what he has here is the honorable fifth column, a long line of stereotypically depicted Japanese people or Asian people, and it says here, waiting for the signal from home. During World War II, many Japanese people were placed in internment camps. Even though the majority of them were actually American-born Japanese, it was assumed that they would be working for the Japanese Empire. There was a negative prejudgment or a negative attitude towards people of Asian descent, and that led to them being sort of placed in these internment camps, for which the United States government later apologized and gave those people monetary retribution, although in small amount. But really, it was the negative judgment that led to the other actions, such as feeling that they could be removed from their homes, their businesses could be closed, and that they could be placed in camps where they couldn't leave and they were guarded by the U.S. military, despite many of them being American citizens. Stereotypes are beliefs. The funny thing about stereotypes it's a sort of belief about personal attributes and characteristics of certain people or people who you assume belong to a particular group. But stereotypes can be also positive as well as negative. Often when we think of stereotypes, we think of things that are negative attributes about people. Certain groups of people known to be cheap, certain types of people known to steal, certain types of people known to commit crime. Whatever it might be in society, that imparts a sort of negative bias towards a particular group. However, there are also positive stereotypes. Certain groups being better at math, certain groups being better at sports, certain groups being better at acquiring second languages. Whatever it might be, sometimes stereotypes, which is an overgeneralization and often inaccurate, can be positive as well as negative. However, positive stereotypes can often be just as confining as negative stereotypes. Say if there's a positive stereotype that Asian people are good at math, what if you're Asian but actually would like to major in English? Say if there's a particular stereotype regarding African American men in sports. What if you're a young African American male but you're really interested in science? Where does that leave you? So sometimes, even though stereotypes can be positive, they can also be confining. I have here something that I thought was really interested on that was picked up on in the press after Hurricane Katrina. If you look at the top portrayal, it's one of the people who was sort of going and looking for food after the New Orleans had become flooded. And you'll see that the way the young man is described is a young man walks through chest-deep floodwater after looting a grocery store. However, if you look at the bottom picture, the very same event was happening with two people who happened to be Caucasian. Right after the storm, they were going looking for food, but it was described as two residents wade through chest-deep water after finding bread and soda from a local grocery store. Clearly, we have certain stereotypes or beliefs about particular groups. And this can be very limiting, and it can also guide and shape the way we see certain groups' behavior and label it in a negative way. And here we have discrimination. Discrimination is the behavioral component of the sort of prejudice triad. Discrimination is a unjustifiable or negative harmful behavior. So it has to be behavioral, and it can be based on anything like race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation. I have here another cartoon done by Dr. Seuss, and it was a commentary on the poll tax. Some of you, if you kind of go back to your history lessons, you might remember the poll tax was enacted and in place before the 1960s, when it was overturned by the Supreme Court. Dr. Seuss labels it democracy's turnstile, and he says, vote here if you can afford it. The poll tax was something enacted really to keep poor people, and particularly in the South, African American people, from being able to vote. And you see here the commentary is 10 million Americans who haven't got the price. The poll tax was discrimination. It was meant to disenfranchise people who were poor and African American and to keep them from voting. So discrimination is something that has to be behavioral.